Welcome to the In-Between, where shift happens. This podcast is for anybody who has ever found themselves in that space in between what was and what's going to be. That space where life happens. The moment between where we are and where we're going. That space that is often uncomfortable to sit in. The stuff of life, the ups, the downs, the moments of connection and insight, and the moments where we can't see two steps in front of us. We will ask all the questions, maybe find some answers, and generally work at being okay in the mystery of the in-between.
Today we are talking about gratitude. And maybe gratitude with a little twist. So I guess I should say we're talking about gratitude with a twist. I think, we're all familiar, I think, with the concept of gratitude and to be grateful. And when things are going tough or whatever, that we just lean into gratitude, just be grateful or find something to be grateful for, all of that. So today we're going to explore maybe a different take on gratitude. And so the premise is that I'm going to start the convo with Dan here. And he doesn't really kind of know the direction we're going, which is right, like the in-between of life, right? Sometimes we don't know what's in front of us. So we're gonna have that same sort of framework today. So are you ready, Dan?
I am ready as I'm going to be. I know nothing.
I know nothing too. So I think that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
So gratitude, I mean, like I said, this idea that when the things of life show up, that these circumstances in life show up, if we can just find things to be grateful for, it can shift our awareness and shift our experience. So the question is do we always have to be grateful for everything?
Oh God.
So is it okay not to be grateful? Let's just start with there. Let's just start at the very beginning. Is it okay not to be grateful for everything?
It's it's fascinating to me because I think there are so many statements or sentiments that, like, in a certain context, we're all just really used to hearing. We don't really
Yeah.
think much of. But when you just said it like that out of context of, like, do we have to be grateful for everything? God, no. How offensive is that idea?
Yeah.
Like, there are so many things I mean, just a whole slew of ideas and thoughts just ran through my head of, like, no, there are definitely things we do not need to be grateful for. And to suggest that somebody should be grateful for, like, the atrocities that can occur in the world.
Yeah.
How offensive. My word. Like, no, you don't have to. If no one's told you before, you don't have to be grateful for something happening in your life. I, I, there may be a time, I mean, depending on what the event is, there may be a time, probably much later, where we can reflect back on something that has happened and maybe find gratitude for things that happened after that were seated in that moment.
Yeah.
But we're not that moment. Didn't really have anything to do with that moment, other than because that moment happened, these things happened after it. But yeah, I don't.
Well, and I think sometimes we approach gratitude kind of like the grocery store checkout. Like, that's the item, grateful, item,
Yeah,
grateful, item,
scan,
grateful,
boop,
that
boop.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that gratitude is this, I don't think it's this kind of as bumper stickery as we have made it. I think that gratitude for me kind of shows up in um just this navigating the experiences of our lives, right? I don't think it's this, I'm going to write 5 things I'm going to be grateful for. I mean, it can show up that way, but I think there are often times where there are challenges and it's like, wow, I don't feel grateful in this moment. I feel pissed off or I feel whatever in this moment, or I feel betrayed, or I feel like all the things that can
Mm-hmm.
happen. And so I think this like constant forcing or trying to strive to be grateful even in this situation, I think really negates our ability to kind of navigate and look at those situations and the experiences. And I think what happens is we have these experiences and we have the really lived emotional responses to these experiences, and sometimes they don't fit the box of what we've been told is spiritual,
Yeah.
right? And
Oh,
so then we're like, oh no, well, I don't feel I'm feeling this and it doesn't align with what I've been told or what I understand that I'm supposed to be. And so now I have to squeeze my experience to kind of slide into that box. And I can do that through gratitude. Like it's like this
yeah.
forced, frantic
Yeah.
sort of thing. And I'm not saying that there's absolutely nothing wrong with gratitude. I think it is transformative in how it
Yeah.
shifts
Yeah.
experiences. But I think that we also have to allow ourselves space just to sit in stuff and be okay and not be grateful, right? I think
Yeah.
sometimes sitting in the not being grateful actually allows us to flow through the experiences and then meet gratitude at some point along the road in
Yep.
whatever, however it may
Yep.
look, right? I don't think we have to meet gratitude right at the stoplight every time of these experiences.
Yeah. I think that that kind of like prescribed gratitude, like gratitude as a solution,
Yeah,
actually deprives us of that thing. Like we are having the reaction we're having for a reason, and if we lean into it, we're we're going to experience something new or learn something. It's going to bring us somewhere
right.
that we don't get to have if we bypass that by jumping immediately to gratitude. Like gratitude, if I feel if it's something like gratitude will happen kind of naturally through like trust the process.
Does the process know we're trusting
There's a,
them?
that will be a t-shirt. We need to make that
Somebody send it an email and let us know. Let it
yeah.
know.
Yeah, does the process know? Um, but I mean, there is like a process that we we're brought through the muck, through the shit, through the experience, where I mean, whatever we need or want to get out of that, we're gonna get out of that, which will inevitably help us in our own personal growth, which we don't get to have if we immediately jump to gratitude. So, like, let's let gratitude be the thing that happens afterwards or on the other side of
Yeah,
the muck, because now we're like, oh, I know this thing I didn't know before, rather than gratitude for the awful thing that happened, or let me look for something to be grateful for so I can avoid the awful thing that happened,
right.
or the thing that just annoyed me or frustrated me or whatever it is. Like, just let yourself be in that thing. And then what I've found is there are often times where when I let myself sit with the mess,
Mm,
there's almost this underlying sense of like, wow, I'm really grateful that I can allow myself to be uncomfortable enough to sit in the mess.
yeah.
Like, it's not that I enjoy sitting in the mess, but there is a sense of enjoyment being able to experience like this wide spectrum of life experiences that I think other practices like misappropriated try
Mm,
and have us avoid. Like
yeah.
avoid discomfort at all costs. Just be grateful. You're like, yeah, I don't know about that.
Well, and then gratitude becomes like I kinda like how you phrased that. It kinda hit a little different. Like, it becomes this byproduct of experiencing our life.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and gratitude itself, I think if we kinda stripped it down from all its pomp and circumstances, and all the
Yeah.
whatever that we put on it, the sunset vision of
Hmm.
gratitude and the gratitude
Hmm.
list and things. I think gratitude in its, like, naked form, um,
Yeah.
is a shift in perspective. It is a simple shift in perspective, right? And so any situation where we can, begin to shift our perspective, then there is that like, creates that little space for that, "Oh, okay. Now I see."
Yep. Yep.
And so we can't shift our perspective until we're looking at the thing, and then we can sit in it, and then maybe then look at it from a different perspective. And so,
Yeah.
um, by that definition, we can't experience gratitude by not looking at the thing, whatever the thing is in our experience, right?
Yeah.
Because we have to have one perspective in order to shift another. And so, really, I think the gratitude is our ability to create space in our experiences to, at some point, have a different perspective to our experiences, which is the natural progression of life, right? I mean, if you look at
Yep.
grief and loss, often the further we get chronologically from whatever situation, we have a different relationship to it.
Yep.
And so it's the same sort of thing. So it's not that we have to be grateful for the thing, but then we can have this space that is created from a different perspective, a different relationship too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we can't have different relationship too if we don't have relationship too, right? It's
Yeah.
like we have to
Yeah.
be, and so we can't use gratitude as a way to be like, wow, that was a really shitty day. I'm going to be grateful. Instead of saying, okay, how do I feel about today? How do I
Yeah.
feel about what happened? What did that bring up for me? What did that stir in me? Did it bring up some stuff underneath to look at? Did it bring up situations where maybe I need to set boundaries with people in my life that are no longer serving or supporting me? Like all the things,
Yeah.
right? Instead of going right to gratitude. And so,
And,
and that's
and I,
not to say, I mean, I think sometimes people can, but I think you have to be really careful not to use it as just another way to bypass
yeah.
discomfort.
Well, and I think, yeah, I mean, I think that's it. Like that natural gratitude idea. I think
Mhm.
it is something that happens naturally. I mean, we know we're wired to experience gratitude
Right.
because of its evolutionary impact on allowing us to make connections, right? We actually have a series, a YouTube series on gratitude. If you haven't checked that out, check that out. It's really cool. It's based on a paper by UC Berkeley all about gratitude. It's awesome. Like the biology of gratitude is amazing, and it is um, the existence of the gratitude mechanism in our body is to um, allow us to make better connection to other people. It's
Yeah.
fascinating. Uh, but to put all this like into perspective, because we're kind of, I guess, talking like theoretical, like, oh well, let's not do this, let's do this or whatever. But
Right. Right.
to put it into context, and I think I've definitely talked about this before. I think I've talked about it on this show maybe once or twice. Um, that back in 2018, my dad died from cancer, and it was by far the hardest experience I've ever gone through. Um, losing a parent is never easy,
Mhm.
especially when you're young and lose a parent, or whatever I am, almost young. Um, but from 6 years later, I can look back on it and be I'm not grateful that my dad died. That sucks.
Yeah.
What I am grateful for is my willingness to be present to the moments after that, like at the moment, the moments after it, and the next moment, the next moment, the next moment. And it was months of like, I mean, it felt like my life had just been like dumped on the floor, right?
Yeah.
But the process that happened afterwards, because I wasn't avoiding it, it allowed me to, I mean, it was some of the greatest personal growth I've ever gone through, because it I guess kind of forced me in a way, forced me to look at and reevaluate like every aspect of my life, right?
Mm.
And so was I grateful to be going through that, like swimming through the mud at the time? No, not at all. And yet from this vantage point, and for several years already, I could look back at it and go like, wow, I'm really grateful for where I've come because of that, because that happened. Like the things that I learned along the way, um, the things from my life that I was like, oh, I can actually put that down. That's actually not mine. I
Yeah.
don't need to pick that back up.
Yeah.
But these things I like. I'm gonna do them a little differently, but I'm gonna pick those back up.
Right.
And these other things of like, yeah, absolutely, that's just as it is, right back into the box. Um, but I think that is a fairly common practice with gratitude, is like you don't have to be grateful for the thing that happened. And there's some things in life I can imagine never being grateful for. Like I'm not grateful for death. And I'm grateful for what I learned because of it. I'm grateful for where it brought me. I'm grateful for the things that happened after it. I think there's been a natural process or progression through all that brought me to gratitude, which
Right.
it was life changing, you know. Um, so I don't, I think again, it's kind of like, well, you should just be grateful. Like if I had jumped to gratitude immediately, like because there were people who like right away, trying to do that like awkward comfort thing. They're like, oh, well,
No.
just look for the gift. Fuck you. Like,
Right.
I mean, who says that? Like, how is that helpful in any way?
Right.
But it's those bumper sticker things we're taught to say or we hear said a lot, and I think the intention is it's well intended, but it doesn't
Right.
really help. But if I had jumped to gratitude right away, not only would that have been fake and inauthentic, but I would have missed out on I would have just repressed all that. It would come up later in a way worse way to somehow have to
Mhm.
deal with and process and work through. But I would have missed all of that learning and being and
Yeah.
doing that happened because of it.
And when you just said fake, it just triggered that's what we do. We apply this fake it till you make it to
I've heard that literally. Like that's the
well, and I think we apply
that's
it
the
to
plan.
I mean, if we're talking like, even like in spirituality, well, fake it till you make it. Well,
Yeah,
no, let's not do that, right? And it's like we don't have to do that because that's the whole
yeah, yeah.
point, right? Is that we don't fake it till we make it. We sit in it until we sit in something else, right? And so it's not yeah, because like what you said, like if you fake this gratitude, well, then what's the point of that, right? It's
Right.
not
Yeah.
authentic, and it actually creates more separation than integration.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what we're talking about too. Gratitude can be a conduit for integration of our
Mhm.
experiences, a tool for integration.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what life is. It is this constant like flow of integrating every experience of every day, of every interaction into a life. That's just what we're always doing, whether we realize it or not. We're always integrating new information or remembering old information, all the things. And then we apply it and make decisions and act and all the things. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, to fake it till you make it, it keeps you stuck. It keeps you in the same place. It doesn't
Yeah. Yeah.
keep you it doesn't put you in a place where you wake up one day and you're like, "Oh, yay, I made it." No, you're gonna it just perpetuates the fake it till you make
Yeah.
it, right? Because then you're always faking it and then never making it, right? And so it's like this
Yeah.
this thing. And so,
Mm.
yeah, and I think it is and I think we've talked about this a lot, and believe me, I'm th this I recognize this in my life too. It's like, it's that and I think this is just, our body is always, our physical body or, our mental body, emotional body. We're always seeking equilibrium. And that's just how our bodies work, always seeking balance, always seeking equilibrium, always, avoiding discomfort and moving back into comfort, all the things. And so this is not like a jab on anybody or any of that, because I mean, that's just the natural state of what we're doing. I think what it is recognizing that that's what's happening. Like, oh, recognizing, oh,
Yeah.
I'm using this, fill in the blank, whatever this is. We're talking about gratitude. So let's just say gratitude. I'm using gratitude in this moment because I really don't want to feel uncomfortable. Okay. And that may be fine. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. But then it may, the next time it comes around, we may say, you know what? I'm really using gratitude because I don't want to feel uncomfortable. But it's the same thing I didn't want to feel uncomfortable before. I wonder if I look at the thing
Yeah.
now, if I can have a different experience or a different relationship to or gratitude for, right? And so, right? I mean, I think,
Yeah. It that reminds me a lot of Gabor Mate's The Myth of Normal. His book, The
yeah,
Myth of
great
Normal.
book.
Yeah, and he talks a lot about how we as humans have like we've learned to shut ourselves off from our intuition
Mm,
And he talks about it a lot, especially in the context of like mothering or parenting, that the entire system of society has said, don't trust your instincts, do these things instead.
Yeah.
Right? Like the parent and child like separation, the kids need to like learn to cope and blah blah blah, whatever nonsense, which had been passed around for so many generations that it's so easily and widely believed. And yet the instinct of a parent is, you hear a baby crying, you want to go pick them up.
Right.
Well, we're literally wired for that, right? Like we're literally wired on for a reason. Like our instinct is to pick them up because that's what a baby needs. They need to be connected. And right, like babies in
Right.
a lot of other countries like don't cry like they do here because they are within a system, a network of people who are constantly caring and carrying that baby.
Right.
And this sounds like that same kind of thing where like we've learned or unlearned this instinct, this trust of knowing how to process and proceed through
Mm.
life events. And so we've unlearned so much that the things we've relearned are like so counterintuitive and actually opposite of what I would say we would quote normally do, right? And
Yeah.
so something uncomfortable happens and our body is wired and programmed to move through that discomfort and bring us back to that balance, bring us
Mm.
through the discomfort
Mhm.
back to balance. But if we avoid the discomfort, the mechanism of our body still wants to react, but we're pretending it doesn't exist. And so
Yeah.
we do something super random and weird that isn't natural to our nature, that actually then like prohibits the mechanism from happening the way it's supposed to, or like amplifies it in weird ways. I mean, it just creates like this super weird reaction to things where we don't actually get to process stuff because we've learned really bizarre coping mechanisms that we didn't actually need to learn. Probably shouldn't have
Yeah.
learned.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, I guess. I mean, you even look at kind of when you have the experience of an illness or your body's fighting something, right? The body's natural reaction is just to slow down, rest, you
Yeah,
feel like, "Ugh," and so often, well, I'll say me, I resist that and like, "Oh, I should be doing something,"
I'm gonna push
instead
through.
of pushing through, that sort of mentality that I was kind of, was instilled at a young age. You push through,
Sure.
you're not sick, all the things, and then your body doesn't have isn't able to, like, do its thing. And I guess it's the same with, like, say,
Yeah,
experiences of I'll just go back to experiences of grief because I think that's a really good example of kind of sitting in discomfort sometimes and sitting through stuff. I mean, your instinct may be just to lay on the couch and eat Twizzlers and Captain Crunch for a month, right?
yeah.
Um, I may be speaking for personal experience. I may not be. I'll
Perhaps.
let you guess that, but, right? And so, what if we just said, "Okay, this is what I need now. I don't really like it. It
Yeah,
really looks probably icky from everyone else that's looking in on the situation, but this is what I got. I got Twizzlers and I got Captain Crunch, well,
and a
actually
pillow.
Crunch Berries. I've got Crunch Berries and Twizzlers, and this is what we're eating for a month. This is what we're doing. We're gonna navigate this experience and this is just what's needed and let that be okay. Like I don't have to be grateful. I don't have to be whatever, fill in the blank. And it's interesting. That was the first time in my life. Okay, I am speaking from personal experience. That was the first time in my life where I allowed myself just to be and not to judge it. And I'm telling you, it lasted for about a month. I will. It was quite miserable, but I was just like, yep, this is what we got. This is what I got. This is what I got.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting on the back end of that, that it created such a more expansive space for me to, like, move in. That I was like, "Oh,
Mm,
I don't actually have to cover up, or I don't actually have to fake it till I make it. I
yeah.
can just not make it for a bit, and that's okay." And then I was able to step out from that, and it really was a pivotal point in my life where I can come back to and be like, "Oh, yeah, this is a Twizzlers and Crunch Berries experience, and that's okay." Because
Yeah.
I know that I allowed myself to sit through it, and I was not consumed by it. Because I think that's what our fear is, that we're gonna be consumed, and we're gonna fall into a hole and never get back up, whatever the experience is bringing up for us. And so I think by building this kind of muscle that, "Oh, yeah, okay, I can sit in it, and I'm not gonna be consumed by it. I'm not gonna be whatever." And and by allowing myself to experience it, then I can come out on the other side.
Yeah.
And then I can have a relationship with gratitude. It doesn't have to be my friend in the moment. It can wait till after,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like, you didn't bring it to the party, but you're taking it home, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking for personal experience on that one, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, but it has that sort of visual to me.
Yeah. 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 I know. I totally get that. I totally get that. Like, it just, I don't know. It's like there's a day all of a sudden where it's like, oh, and I don't know. Like for me, it's not necessarily like the word doesn't come up in my mind, but there is a
Oh,
shift in feeling. And
yeah,
when I realize it's like, oh, I think that's gratitude. Like I think I'm glad I had the experience I had because it brought me to this place which feels different and I would
yeah,
consider a greater experience than what I was having before.
yeah.
And so it's not like all of a sudden there's like a flashing lights that's like, this is gratitude, be grateful. It's like,
Gratitude, gratitude.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But there is just this like natural like cycle or something where all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, that feels different.
Right, right.
And it could be different for everybody. I mean, I think people feel or recognize gratitude differently, but for me, I don't like immediately go like, "Oh, gratitude. Yeah. Yeah, I'm so grateful."
Yeah. Well, and I think, the long and short of it is like, you don't have to feel one way or the other. You don't have to feel gratitude, and you don't have to not feel gratitude, right? So we're not like,
Yeah.
this conversation is like not prescriptive in any direction that you go. I
Right.
think it is like creating space to feel what you feel and not having to feel a certain way because you feel like that's how you should feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that it's just normalizing that we don't have to follow the shoulds. Um,
Isn't that always it?
the shoulds get in the way, don't they? For
Yeah.
sure. I think and what's interesting is I don't know who created the shoulds, but it's almost like it's kinda like when I don't know about you, but, like throwing a firecracker and then running the other direction. Those are the people that created the should. "We're gonna throw this firecracker and then we're gonna get the hell out of here," right? And so it's like,
Yeah.
who created these shoulds? And if they are created, then maybe we can create some other ones or the unshoulds. The
Yeah.
unshoulds, that's what we will create. It's like we don't have to fit in a box. And that, for me, is like the Cracker Jack prize of this conversation, that I don't
Yeah.
have to fit into this.
Yeah.
And I can have gratitude for that awareness. There you go. We're full circle back to gratitude.
There you go.
Because
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with gratitude, right? The gratitude is lovely.
It's great. It's powerful. And
When you're ready for it,
yeah.
when there's space for it. And so I feel a whole lot better because of this conversation. Right. I think
Yeah.
any time that I don't feel like I have to fit a certain mold, oh, uh, I'm able to breathe a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
So okay, so if you were gonna do, let's do this. One top three ways to sit in ungratitude.
Ooh.
I
Yeah.
mean, not that there's ungratitude, but for the sake of this, right? How
Yep.
can we sit
Yep.
and be okay with not being grateful?
Yeah.
Top
Well,
3 ways.
number one is definitely giving yourself permission.
There we go.
Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Not only is it okay, oh, here we go. if we were to rewrite the shoulds, you should let yourself sit in.
There you
go. No, but really, I mean, like, I think it's been taught consciously and subconsciously that it's not okay. If something is not perfect, whatever that means, then something is wrong. It's not okay. Something bad is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And there are certain situations where, like, we need to trust that instinct. Something feels off. It's not right. But the majority of the time, when we are feeling like something is off and wrong and not okay, it's because we've ignored that intuition long enough. We don't know how to judge. We don't know how to make sense of the situation realistically.
Yeah.
Allowing ourselves the permission to sit in the mess
Yeah.
is really powerful, and we relearn the intuition. So the second one, I think, is trust your intuition. Learn to trust your intuition again,
There you go.
or at least try. I mean, that's where I'm at, right? Like, I am trying to learn what my intuition is actually saying, and not the shoulds that I've learned along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So when I give myself the permission to sit in it and then listen to what my body is actually telling me about it, it super transforms the experience.
It's like
And
recognizing our own voice. We
Yeah.
begin to recognize our own voice.
Yeah, I think so. Right. And then you can't, like, force the transformation. So I'm not suggesting that, but just recognize that, like, there's gonna be transformation
Yeah.
when we do that, and it's gonna be better than we will have a greater experience of life than we had prior to that moment, prior to letting ourselves sit in that. So I think that's, like, going back to the whole look for the gift thing. I think that's what those people mean. I think that's where that idea came from. Like, allowing ourselves to sit in the mess, we will learn something about ourselves, about life, about what we've learned about life, or whatever, that will open up a greater experience, a greater opportunity to experience life when we do it.
Well, you heard it here. You don't have to be grateful. So thank you for tuning in. I've learned a lot. Hopefully you've learned a lot about how we navigate the in-between, where we don't always have to be grateful, and that's okay. And so until next time, we'll catch you in the in-between, where hopefully a little shift happens.
Nobody really enjoys being in the in-between, but thanks for being here anyway. We may not have found all of the answers, but certainly some, and maybe more importantly, a little shift has happened. Because that is really what it's all about, learning to be curious, authentic, and yes, maybe even a tad bit vulnerable. And the beauty of it all is that we are not alone in the in-between. So until next time, we hope a lot of shift happens.